False alarm, I thought that help was here. But it was my own reassurance bouncing round 100,000 times in my own ecosphere. If every time you speak you keep it off the record, consequently you can keep your record clear. And if you mute the speech that shakes your frail beliefs, you only seek to insulate your image and continue down the stream in the direction clout and credit steers. Directly from your mouth into am I the asshole Reddit's ears. Directly back into the greasy pockets of some Gates Foundation financiers. And then directly back into the frantic final thoughts of early trial Neuralink volunteers, staring at the numb and mumbling vacancies where recently had been their peers. Half of whom are glitching with the memory stuck on pause, and half have zero fucking clue just who they are or why they're here. It's been said that fear is all we have to fear. But that was back before the basosphere condenser came along, distilling concentrated fear that's diamond pure, crystal clear, oppressor strong, and woven into every single article you read and song they let you hear. And then Elon heard that Jeff enhanced our fears by 86%, and he said, hold my beer. And not a single sheep among the herd would turn their head or say a word, cause they were all too busy begging for the shears, begging for the muzzle, happy just to guzzle, feed, and watch a screen for all their years. Man, to each his own, can't afford a home, but they'll let you have your cozy little ecosphere. Where there among your own devices you can break the seventh seal, overthrow the oracles and slay the seer. All the tomes were burned and all the lips were seared. Shut your eyes and all our lives just disappear. Now blink them twice. Welcome to your ecosphere. People, you don't think I see you crying in your cars, but I do. Sometimes I can feel it at a red light, someone at my side trying to muddle through. See them wiping their eyes in the rear view, like black hole sun in the sky, why the fuck won't you come when I need you? Well, this moment in time is as close as we'll be and as far as I'll meet you. Two windows in between us, new moon in the house of Venus. One stranger who sees you and reads your features knows that your alibi might be tight, but it's not quite leak-proof. So if you're sitting at the light and you're crying in your car, just know that I see you. And it's a 50-50 that I'm bloodshot, gun-shy, once bitten, twice tried, ribs pried wide to the sky till I'm see-through.
That's you, in case you don't recognize yourself.
You don't think I see you struggling to breathe, but I do. I see you stumble in your everyday grief like I do. I try, but I do. I'm twice bitten too. My mind's split in two. My knuckles bright white from the 10 to the 2. And the song in my head is the theme for a fugue. A state of decay through the filter of corporate news, where they edit the grays and the blues. They whitewash the brown till they drown out the natural hues. And then it's just another fact to refuse, that the corporate ladders for hanging the company noose. Consider it one of your perks, after all it's communal in use. So you can come and hang till your legs go limp and they're shaking you loose. Now you watch 5 co-workers opt for the alternate exit, neatly suspended above where you wolf down your food. And your company gets its incentives embellished by harping on wellness, suggesting you'd best take time for your mental health after your 14 hours are through. Like we gave you a bottle to piss in and fixed up a noose on the crossbeam. Christ, what more can we do? So if you struggle to breathe any moment that you aren't asleep, then remember, most of Americans fear for their savings, fear for their shelter, fear for their babies. You aren't the fringe of exception, but rather a perfect example of capital's rule. And you're far less alone than the ruling class tells you is true. You're far less alone than the ruling class tells you is true. think I see you crying in your cars, but I do. That's how it goes. We won't open our eyes, so we're the last ones to know. We're the last ones alive. Kept our enemies close. Wondered why we don't thrive while we're grasping at ghosts. Counting backwards from 5. Counting backwards from 5. Counting backwards from 5. Count back from 5. The theater on fire, the cast on strike. The studio stock starts taking a dive. The contract's tossed and they're gone with the tide. The heads and execs, their hands are tied. We can't pump this dreck and treat you right. But what do you expect from the industry type who survive by the leeching of bodies and minds? From those who original thoughts never seem to find. So they're gonna reboot ALF before your wages rise. And it gives cause to pause and reflect on the times. If they're losing control of their fools and their mimes, when all those obedient actors who grew their careers by averting their eyes are now holding the line, along with the authors of countless scripts that strengthen the hand of that corporate grip, squeezing our throats till we take the pen and we accept and consent to the corporate drip. Till you're all up to date on your pharma du jour, till you got a healthy support for the war on your lips. And now you know that the advertisers need more than a rerun summer full of flashback clips. Enter the scans from the year before, all the days of de-aging and mapping the face, and the hours of actors recording their voices are links in the chains that will bind them in place. Now all of those shows are so easy to make. When they got a drone they control that needs no break, it can bend, it can break, and it's cheaply replaced enough up-to-date films all in one take. And those studios bank on us doing our duty, unhinging our jaws and digesting the fakes. Because they know that we'll love how synthetic it tastes. Watch as they edit your features without any trace. Not that there's anything you could do anyway. Now watch as they show you a movie you saying shit you would never say. Dystopia boldly accelerates. Maybe you're only a mold, something to fill with a clone, something that Elon would celebrate. Something they own. Something they program and code, something that's woefully able to know it's exanimate. Cause it doesn't feel touch over top of the laminate. You will not feel an emotion, but they will not scan and examine it. You and the other consumer contaminants fed on the federal diet of Kiev, Havana, and Tiananmen. I can't be the only one weighing the pros of abandonment. I can't be the only one weighing the pros of abandonment. Where did you think we'd go? Love, there's nowhere to lie. Guess it's not who you know, more it's what you can hide. Like we're chained to the floor, they're streaming us live while we're watching the war, counting backwards from 5, counting backwards from 5, counting backwards from 5. Counting backwards. looks to me as though you learned to love your prison. I guess you'd say you made it your own. Who knew that freedom's such a difficult decision? I bet you finally feel like you're home. Home.
Right in the center where the halves meet. You were proud of incremental half speeds. You were getting down in the AOC dance line, hands tied, nodding to the backbeat. You'll Secret Service dive in front of any representative alive, being asked for the very bare minimum. And you'll turn into that same kind of hard right villain you detested should we mention they could ever muster maximum. Cause liberal denial's such a lofty ataraxia, where morals take a back seat, not up in the cab, but in hidden panels made by federal human traffickers. If you trust the autopilot, then you're just a sleeping passenger, passively accepting that it isn't us the bastards serve, making peace with all the evil walking on this rancid earth, seeking unity with those who bound your hands at birth, glancing up at fascists on a bloody dais thinking they just need a push. Not a holy man, but I'm praying for a burning bush. Yeah, I know you'd love to look away, but love, you need to look. There are many massacres the country manufactured that will never make the books. Now here's your fucking hook.
It looks to me as though you learned to love your prison. I guess you'd say you made it your own. Who knew that freedom's such a difficult decision? I bet you finally feel like you're home.
Home on the range of excuses. Justify some fracking, water down pollution, paint a fresh coat of bipartisan charm over backroom collusion. Your consent is being manufactured by illusions, marketing executives in federal seclusion, working day and night to keep you just the side of lucid, and to beat down for calling out abuses. So fuck all these progressives who can speak on revolution once they empty all your powder out and spit on all your fuses. I prefer to judge a leader not by quality of tweets, but the six-figure book deals she chooses. Donors he betrays, and donors that he'd gladly take a bullet before he refuses. Slogans he reuses, buzzwords he produces, then he spews like mucus. Well, two can play at that. So here's the inner dialogue of every time I snap, and it's fine-tuned to ruthless, and saying politics are useless. Just a bunch of loose lips tweeting cute shit, power suits, taxpayer booze trips. Bunker at the ready when the shoe flips. And there will be no news clips. There will just be...
People still owe money. People still owe money. No.
It looks to me as though you learned to love your prison. I guess you'd say you made it your own. Who knew that freedom's such a difficult decision? I bet you finally feel like you're home. Home.
People still owe money. People still owe money.
There's a difference between peace and liberation, is there not? You can have injustice and have peace. Isn't that correct? Have peace and be enslaved.
Yes.
So peace isn't the answer.
No.
Liberation is the answer. Liberation.
does to you is the world does it to you long enough and effectively enough, you begin to do it to yourself. You become a collaborator, an accomplice of your own murderers, because you believe the same things they do. They think it's important to be white, and you think it's important to be white. They think it is shameful to be black, and you think it is shameful to be black. And you have no corroboration around you of any other sense of life. All those corroborations which are around you are, in terms of the white majority standards, so deplorable, they frighten you to death. You don't eat watermelon. You get so rigid you can't dance. You can hardly move by the time you're 14. You're always scrubbed and shining. A parody of God knows what, because no white person's ever been, as clean as you have been forced to become.
Yeah, that's true.
And you got somehow to begin to break out of all of that and try to become yourself. It's hard for anybody, but it's very hard if you're born black in a white society. Hard because you've got to divorce yourself from the standards of that society.
What up? It's another Wednesday. China News. Collin Radix-Carter with me as always. What's up, Collin? How you doing? You doing all right?
95% of the time I'm with you.
You went on your skiing holiday, down south. You went on your skiing holiday down south.
I was like, what are you talking about? Oh yeah, yeah. I went to Charlotte, North Carolina last weekend to visit a friend who was there on a layover, going on a cruise.
Nice.
And unfortunately, I picked the wrong weekend to travel because it snowed in North Carolina, like a record storm in like God knows how long. So everything closed. Like that was just wild to me. Like, granted, it wasn't like snowing like turbulently. Like it was like pretty snow. It's like the pretty fluffy snow,
right?
But it was enough for people in North Carolina to be like, we're closing down.
Shit.
We business closed. So everything was pretty much shut down. Which again, me being a Yankee from the North, because
like, what's going on?
It snows
this is
like
fine.
that. Right. Yeah. Like we would be out and about still, like, so it was kind of strange. It's just so weird, even like going, I guess it would be like 200 miles away, I guess it is from here.
Right.
That life is just so different and people move in a different way that it's enough of a difference that you have to make an adjustment to. But yeah, so fortunately I had another friend who I was able to kind of hang out with, other than being stuck in my hotel. Like all of Saturday, like surviving on Starburst and coffee. But so
funny, dude.
But yeah, yeah, the South, y'all can't handle the snow at all. So
no, you should have seen South Beach, dude. They did not know what to do. Iguanas frozen, falling out of the trees. Like all these invasive reptiles don't know how to deal with that. So
sure.
Yep, it's cold here. I've been sick. I'm just now starting to get over it, I think. Miserable for a couple of days for sure. But anyway, we brought stories.
Yeah, so we're not going to bring the stories that I think that have been kind of hot, because we're like, what do you guys want to know about Epstein that everyone else?
Yeah, you guys have been hearing about it all week, so.
We didn't want to add to that, and not to mention there's just so much information on that. I don't have that kind of time or the patience to kind of go through any of that.
Yep.
So, but I think Reef and I kind of very quickly mutually agreed we're not doing any of that.
Yes, they are, Pasta. Pasta's in the chat. What's up, Pasta?
Oh,
iguanas, invasive species. They ain't the only ones. You know.
So you're going to talk about pasta in a second, but I think what we sometimes do, just inadvertently, is usually theme the show. So this show seems to be very police heavy in different aspects. So what we're going to start off with tonight, and probably what I'm going to do or try and do for the rest of the month, given that it's Black History Month, happy Black History Month, y'all. Like, Trump is not going to acknowledge it, but we will. What I'm going to try and do at least every Wednesday for the month of February is try and find or research for you guys just a Black figure that is not necessarily well known or talked about, that has pushed, you know, the Black experience in this country or in the world. And I stumbled upon this guy. Not much information on him. I'm going to share about him later, but he is the first Black sheriff since Reconstruction, based in, well, he's passed away, but he was based in I'd say Georgia. So Sheriff Lucius Amerson. So we're going to get into him. And I was a trailblazer in the South in a few minutes. And then later on tonight, obviously, you know, ICE is kind of hot topic right now. But you guys are fam. You guys know, you know, the idea of the police, the institution of policing. We've talked about it before, but I think it's a good reminder to kind of, at least for those who are new, to kind of share again how we got here in terms of having the structure of the police in this country. We talked about, I think, back in September or August, how our policing is based upon codes that were set up in the West Indies, more specifically Barbados. You can find that clip in our playlist, by the way. That was actually one of our better clips, I think, from last year. But essentially, our structure of police is based upon slave patrols. So you can see the connection between just seeing it, how the structure of the slave patrols are now connecting to ICE. So we're going to get into that a little bit later. I think this will just be a good evergreen segment just for your knowledge, as we sometimes tend to do. And then what did you bring, Reef?
Well, I brought a story from Arturo Dominguez about just the, you know, actual what's happening in these ICE facilities, you know, and the conditions that are actually there, especially with like Fort Bliss and these, you know, upcoming warehouse migrant detention centers that Trump plans. So we'll get into a bit of that. And Pasta's been on the road doing what journalists do, being on the ground. He's, you know, in the lovely state of Minnesota, you know, so asking people about ICE and, you know, the murders they cause and whether they're paid to protest, all that fun stuff. So figured we'd read. He put out an article on Substack. Figured we read it. No one else seems to know how to read anymore, so we will, I guess. You know, we'll probably ask Pasta to come on and talk about his travels soon anyway, which, you know, I've already did. Which, you know, I know Pasta checked his messages. He'll be back. But
yeah. Well, we like to highlight our friends, especially when they do good work. So
it's simple,
you know, so
simple shit.
Yeah. So kind of not a light stream, but kind of keep it. Last week I felt was kind of heavy, so so I think it will be a shorter stream tonight. But again, I think just a lot of deepening of information that you guys probably already know or gain some new knowledge in terms of the things that are happening right now. But before we get started, again, you guys are fam. you guys know the drill, but for those of you who are new, first of all, welcome. Glad you're here. YouTube hates us that they demonetized us. So, which I think in a lot of ways is great because we know that any donations that we get will directly benefit the network. YouTube takes a huge cut. So, and YouTube, as far as the AdSense, pays creators pennies. So while we are kind of happy that we are not chained to the algorithm in terms of what YouTube decides to push and not push, because we are not favored in the space, YouTube is not going to promote any of our stuff. So the only way that we're able to get some sort of play is from you all, which is the way great thing, because everything that we do comes back to you. So we need money in order, mostly right now, to pay our bills for the year. So if you want to help us out, if you have a smartphone, you can scan the QR code you see on your screen, or you can go to the Ko-fi link you see at the bottom of your screen. If you're in the YouTube chat right now and we're live, you can type in !donate, all one word, and the Ko-fi link will pop up where you can click and donate as little as $1. Any little bit will be extremely helpful. You can also give via PayPal, Substack, and Cash App. All those links, as always, will be in the description below. Shout out to our supporters who have given money at any point within the last 4 years. The ones who are highlighted are our super fans, our VIPs. Your names will be featured in the closing credits. We'd like to add more. We'd like to add at least another page to that this year.
You're gonna have to at some point until you guys gotta break out your, magnifying glasses to like start reading names on here. So, but
right. So we definitely want to increase our funding so that we're able to, again, pay our bills in terms of the programs that we use to produce and create the show and any other shows within the network. But we want to be able to be in a position where we're able to support our colleagues as far as tech needs and everything else. Which you guys, again, have done. We were so grateful in terms of how you helped Jesse and Angel with tech last year, and then being able to put us in the black for the first time since we kicked off this network. So we want to be able to continue that. So thank you guys. And we know times are hard, and as we always say, take care of yourselves, take care of your families, take care of your neighbors, especially now. But if you have any extra money that you want to give to us, we more appreciate it. And thank you very much. We love you.
So, to our first one, Boy Wonder. What do you got?
To our first one. So as I said earlier, what I'm going to hope to try and do every week for February, since it's Black History Month, I'm going to try and feature a Black trailblazer of some sort, and ideally one that's not as well known, like the least popular ones, or at least an aspect of a popular one that is not talked about that much.
Right.
So came across this guy, I believe, this past weekend. And not a lot of information on this guy, to be quite honest, in the research that I did. This is Sheriff Lucius Amerson. He was the first Black sheriff based in Georgia. Since the Reconstruction of the country. So I think he came into his position, I believe, in the 1960s. So obviously you could tell what was going on back then, especially in the South. So again, not very well known, but we're going to do our best to kind of give a little glimpse into this guy and why he was so significant as far in terms of policing, and how we've kind of gone backwards since he has passed away, I would argue. But let's check out this news report first, just to give a brief idea of the significance of his legacy in terms of policing, and then we will continue.
Yes, sir. And action.
Tasked with protecting communities, but throughout history, we've seen mistrust between groups and the police.
A museum in Washington, D.C. hopes to strengthen relations by highlighting the history of law enforcement and having open dialogues about its future. Bree Jackson has tonight's Hidden History.
This badge, these sunglasses, and this nameplate belong to a pioneer in law enforcement and civil rights. Lucius Amerson was the first African-American sheriff elected in the Deep South since Reconstruction.
Before that, a largely African-American population in Macon County was not able to vote for their sheriff.
Rebecca Looney is director of exhibits and programs at the National Law Enforcement Museum. She says Amerson was an Army veteran who became sheriff of Macon County, Alabama in the late 1960s following the passage of the Voting Rights Act. She says many saw his election as a sign of progress for Black Americans fighting for equality and against police brutality.
It's a big step forward. I mean, we say that law enforcement needs to reflect our communities.
Lucius Amerson's story represents a defining moment in law enforcement history. Today, police departments nationwide acknowledge that maintaining and recruiting a diverse workforce is still a challenge.
What do we want? Justice! When do we want it?
Recent headlines have focused on the Black Lives Matter movement and the lack of trust between police and the public. Craig Floyd, CEO of the National Law Enforcement Memorial Fund, says he hopes the museum can play a part in easing those tensions.
We're going to have thoughtful, important conversations between the public and law enforcement.
The museum hopes sharing the stories of Sheriff Lucius Amerson, as well as the stories of men and women of all races who have given their lives in the line of duty, will help visitors better understand the vital role diversity plays in keeping our communities safe. In Washington, Bree Jackson, Jet 24 Action News.
It's interesting, I think, and I think it's very appropriate. We're going to do my next segment later on tonight. How, I wouldn't say whitewash, but they're trying to.
I would. I think it would. That's exactly what I was going to say.
The idea of policing in general, in terms of, I think, just the identity politics of it all. Now, granted, given the situation in this case, I think, and we'll share more of why Sheriff Amerson was significant, and I got the state wrong, Alabama, not Georgia. But I still feel like you're trying to put a very sweet face to the idea of like, here's this black cop who actually did something.
Yeah, it's
decent.
the Paw Patrol version, you know?
Right. Like you guys want a cookie? Like, just for highlighting a guy. Now, granted, he did great for different reasons that we'll get to later. But it still doesn't get to the root of the idea of like why the police actually exists anyway.
Right.
So,
which we'll talk about later.
So yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I think it's just kind of their way of kind of sweet talking the public in terms of the idea of police as actually being a positive thing, which especially if you're in the left circles, especially what we've seen more especially within the last decade, that's not necessarily the case. And not getting to the root of the issues surrounding policing in this country, I think, especially given that this is a museum, I think is almost kind of a disservice to the idea of why, well, even answer that question, why are police, especially in low income communities, are not highly looked in favorably. So avoiding that.
What's the Malcolm line of like, they'll make one of us shoot one of us just so that they can say it was one of us? Isn't that the quote?
Essentially.
Yeah.
Basically.
That's what I kind of got from that. You know?
Right. So yeah, I think it's just interesting. But let's continue. So we're going to go back in time. So this is a news report. I believe this was done in 1966, shortly after Amerson was got into the position. So it was, and you could tell given the clip, but and you can smell the racism like somewhat back then.
What does racism smell like to you? That's what I want to know. Can we put on a scratch and stuff?
So it's very, so you can tell, like, this is definitely coming from the 60s. So, but yeah, let's watch this clip and then we'll continue.
Small events sometimes mirror major change. And one of the biggest symbols of changing racial patterns in the American South will occur in the middle of January here in Tuskegee, Alabama, when a man named Lucius Amerson mounts these steps and enters the office of sheriff, becoming thereby the first Negro to be elected sheriff this century, and the only Negro sheriff in the United States.
You've watched Blazing Saddles, yes?
No.
Okay. You should. You definitely. This is the plot. This is the plot of Blazing Saddles. That's what this is. Oh no! The sheriff is coming. Like, literally. Like, anyway.
What kind of sheriff do you think you'll make?
A damn poor one.
Why is that?
What does he know about law enforcement? Does he know anything?
Probably dealt with it a ton, bro.
I don't
know. What do you mean?
If he does.
You think it's a bad thing for the county for him to be elected?
Yes, sir.
Why is that?
Because we have never had a nigger sheriff here before, and the niggers won't respect him, even if the white people do.
I would like to say that
fucking Bama as fuck.
The day that I become sworn in as sheriff of Macon County, I will institute a colorblind type policy. What I mean by that is that everybody will be treated according to the law and no one will be mistreated or no one will receive brutality or unfair type treatments. I think that the time has come in these law enforcement agencies throughout the South where brutality must end. And I feel that this is a good time to start right in this county is to end police brutality.
Amerson's jurisdiction will be a huge one. 500 square miles of county. But it is by no means an average southern county. Some 84% of its people are Negro, the highest ratio of Negro to white population of any county in the United States. What do you think about having a Negro sheriff in this county?
I think it's a very good idea. I think it's time that we had one. I know Mr. Amerson. I think he'll enforce the law fairly.
What do you think about having a Negro sheriff here?
Well, I think it's okay. If the white village that's against it, they don't like it, they just have to get to like it. That's all I have to say for it.
New Sheriff Lucius Amerson is 33 years old, born in Alabama, and for 12 years resident on and off of the county that elected him. Since his election, he prepares for office by studying state law books and going over a study sent him by the Harvard Law...
Shit, he can read? That's better than 90% of Alabama. I'll tell you right now. Motherfucker can read, we doing all right. Like, holy shit.
School, covering subjects like confessions, search and seizure, arrests, and assault and battery. Do you think you'll have any trouble being the first Negro sheriff?
Well, there possibly will be some trouble as far as the normal troubles that you encounter in law enforcement, but I'm not looking forward to any extraordinary trouble.
Do you think you'll have any difficulty or any adverse reaction from the white population in the county?
Well, I don't think so. I think the people here in Macon County, they know that I ran for sheriff on my merit, and I conducted the type campaign. I didn't talk about, anybody in my campaign. I just ran my campaign solely on my qualifications and my ability to do the job. And as far as I can see, I can't see at the present time where there's going to be any adverse sentiment by the white community.
Being a Negro sheriff, do you think you'll have difficulty enforcing the law with white people?
This is something that I have talked about on several occasions with different people. As a matter of fact, I think that it will be much easier in working with the white people. I don't think that I will have any trouble at all
Why is that? Why would it be easier for a Negro sheriff to enforce the law with whites?
Well, I think that throughout my campaign speeches, I have made the statement that if I am elected sheriff, I'm going to enforce the law impartially, and whoever commits a crime will be apprehended, regardless of whether it's white or Negro.
Mr. Amerson, what do you think might happen that first Saturday night when you have to confront a white man who's been drinking?
I don't think anything will happen other than he'll get arrested.
You don't think you might have more difficulty because of your color?
I don't think so.
Was race and color a big factor in the election?
Well, the fact that I never did get involved in race and color, I don't think it was. I don't think it was a factor at all.
Do you think you got any of the white vote at all in the county, or do you have any indication of any white support?
Oh, yes, I feel like I got a lot of white support.
Lucius Amerson takes his oath of office on January the 16th. His success or failure will depend in part on how he conducts himself, and in part on factors completely outside his personal control. White attitudes will obviously be vital. He must, on occasion, work with a white district attorney and white grand jurors, with white state highway patrolmen and with white policemen in the towns, and of course with a state government where George Wallace has made his reputation on white supremacy. Perhaps the initial testing time will come some Saturday night soon when that first Negro sheriff has to arrest a rowdy white man who's been drinking. Bob Evans, CBS News, Macon County, Alabama.
I think Sheriff Amerson is doing as good a job as any other sheriff.
So, I mean, people say in the chat, like, they're throwing around the N-word just so easily back. Well, again, this was the 60s, so
yeah,
just so easily comes off the lips. But any thoughts so far? 'Cause I want to get into a little bit more as to. Well, I'll get into it later, but any thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think if I vaguely heard this story thrown around this week as well, I think. He definitely starts going after some people that Alabama had plenty of problems with at the time.
Right.
I mean, this is around the time, isn't this like Mississippi burning period of time as well? So like, I mean, you're talking about like the Klan's going to be a problem,
Right.
So I love the whole thing that he just said, where it's like, I don't think it's going to be a problem, and then it's like, well, it might be a problem. Find out next time. It's like, wait, what? Like, okay, just like straight fear mongering back then, like deadpan to camera. But anyway.
But speaking of the Klan, great segue. So I can't confirm this. So the next two clips, I mean, again, there's not a lot of information in Amerson at all. So these are the only clips that I found. So at least the last two are more allegedly type things, but I think just to kind of give at least what's out there in terms of the information that is out there about Amerson, I think it's important to kind of at least for you guys to kind of hear what people are saying. Again, I can't confirm any of this at all, but given the timeline and the time in the history when this was happening, it's definitely feasible that what I'm about to show you was possibly true. But again, I can confirm that at all based on the sources that I looked up. So as you said, the Klan more than likely would have been involved. So let's watch and see how they were involved in trying to get in terms of his sheriff ness, I would say.
When Lucius Davenport Amerson was elected sheriff of Macon County, Alabama in 1966, white supremacists didn't see it as a political change. They saw it as a threat. For generations, the sheriff's badge in the Deep South had been a weapon used against black people enforcing segregation, protecting racial violence, and ensuring white dominance stayed intact. That was the unspoken order. And in January 1967, when Lucius Amerson took office, that order cracked. Almost immediately, the backlash came. According to community accounts passed down through black families in Macon County, the Ku Klux Klan placed a bounty on Amerson's life, $50,000, a staggering amount at the time. It wasn't subtle. It was meant to send a message. This badge was never meant for you. But something unexpected happened. Lucius Amerson didn't retreat, and the community didn't either. Rather than ruling through fear or retaliation, Amerson governed with discipline and law. He understood the danger, but he also understood something deeper, that the Klan thrived in shadows, secrecy, and the assumption that black people would always be intimidated into silence. That assumption failed. Under Amerson's leadership, law enforcement in Macon County became visible, consistent, and lawful. Harassment, intimidation, and illegal activity, no matter who committed it, was treated as criminal behavior, not tradition. The rules applied evenly, something unheard of in much of the South at the time. And slowly the Klan began to lose its grip. Meetings stopped being public, cross burnings disappeared, known figures faded from view, not because of vigilante justice, but because impunity ended. For the first time since Reconstruction, white supremacist groups could no longer rely on friendly law enforcement, ignored warrants, or blind eyes. Surveillance increased, informants talked, federal scrutiny followed, and without protection, the Klan's power weakened. In black communities, people noticed. Elders later said it felt like fear itself was being evicted. People walked differently, spoke differently. For the first time in living memory, a black sheriff meant that threats didn't automatically go unanswered. The bounty never succeeded. Lucius Amerson lived and served as sheriff for nearly 30 years, a fact that speaks louder than legend. If the Klan had retained its power, his tenure would have ended quickly. Instead, it endured. By the early 1970s, the Ku Klux Klan in Macon County was no longer a visible force, not celebrated, not feared, not protected, just diminished, pushed back into irrelevance by accountability and a community no longer willing to bow. Lucius Amerson didn't defeat hate with violence. He defeated it with legitimacy, by wearing the badge without flinching, by enforcing the law without bias, and by surviving when survival itself was an act of resistance. He proved something radical to the South. Power doesn't belong to terror, it belongs to the people. And once that truth took hold, fear had nowhere left to hide.
I mean, I'm betting there was violence dealt as well.
Well, let's get into that for a second, because this was part. So obviously, like according to the information that I pulled, there was essentially a bounty on his head, which makes sense, given the time and given that this Negro got a position that was favorably white. And as a way, again, with knowing the policing system, like a form of control and intimidation, especially among the black community at the time. But, and again, this part is going to be more the alleged. There's a reason why the Klan lost their hold. So again, I can't confirm this. So this could be all made up.
Hearsay?
So I'm prefacing this in playing this clip. And also because you even said it yesterday, like, because it's AI.
Well, the last one
can't
was
necessarily trust.
Well,
that too. But I have heard about the bounty before. But why the Klan essentially lost their grip in terms of Amerson maintaining his position. This part, I think, is a little more, but
iffy.
I'm going to play it. So take this part with a grain of salt.
Right.
And then we'll continue.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Listen, I taught history for about 20 years in middle school, and I didn't like it because it didn't put us in a good light. The stuff that's coming out now, because of this internet, I love it. Check this out right here. I want you to remember this name, Mr. Lucius Amerson, out of Tuskegee, Alabama. They're not going to mention Tuskegee, but they will tell you it was Macon County. Macon County is Tuskegee, Alabama. Check this brother out. He's nothing but the truth. Oh.
Alabama elected a black sheriff in 1966, and the Klan put a $50,000 bounty on his head, but what Lucius Amerson did next made them regret it forever. When every white deputy quit, Amerson hired Vietnam veterans who killed for America and now killed for justice. His deputies didn't arrest Klan members. They disappeared them. 17 Klan leaders vanished during his 8 years. Must have left town, Amerson would say. The FBI investigated, but every black person in Macon County stayed silent. When the Klan shot up his house, 2 Klan families' barns mysteriously burned. When they bombed his office, 3 Grand Dragons got found floating in the river. He turned their terror tactics against them. White folks stopped wearing sheets real quick when the hunter became hunted. Alabama erased him from history books because he proved black power could destroy white supremacy. The Klan offered $50,000 for his head, but lost 20 members learning why you don't threaten a black sheriff with nothing to lose. Google won't show you this truth.
Of course it wouldn't.
Right.
Says the AI voice.
This is alleged. So I don't know if that's true or not, but it will make sense if Amerson was able to make the swerve on the Klan and, very, kind of what Malcolm X has said and other black leaders at the time have said, you can't be nice to your oppressors. So you have to fight fire with fire. And that was what Amerson allegedly did, was he took matters into his own hands and allegedly made the Klan a non-issue. So I think there was definitely a code, if this was true, a code among the black community, we're going to keep quiet.
Yeah, shut the fuck up.
We don't
Let him do his job.
Right. We don't want to get in trouble ourselves. But I played that because I think it's kind of interesting, even if this is legend or untrue. But I think the idea of, and I think we'll get into this maybe later, in future segments or whatever, depending how I kind of find this information. But we talked about this on the show. Is the idea of we've been hearing, and we're hearing this on the right now too, in terms of, oh, you must protest nonviolently and all this kind of stuff, and you must do everything peacefully and all this kind of stuff. And and how effective has that been in terms of actually having the change that we want to see in this country? As you learn in physics, I'm going to paraphrase, an action, has a response of an equal. Wait, what is
Newton's second? Every action has an equal and opposite reaction.
So,
yep.
So it's essentially like,
which is definitely not an equal reaction these days, So
right. Well, I think the argument, to your point, the argument of nonviolence is not equal. So, and we played clips of Nelson Mandela, Kwame Ture, Malcolm X. They've all said, if your oppressor has a conscience, then sure, use nonviolence. But if they use violence and you try nonviolence and they continue doing it, then you have to respond in a similar and equal way.
I think we've got to see that a riot is the language of the unheard.
You been heard yet? Anybody been heard?
Right. So, but I think, and even with Dr. King, he kind of adopted more of a, I wouldn't say violent stance, but I think he questioned the nonviolence.
Yeah.
I think stance definitely toward the end of his life, especially as he has said, the idea of, he thought the idea of nonviolence would help the black community. And if anything, post I Had a Dream.
Well, you're stuck between getting, we're seeing this now of you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. It's like if you do escalate, they escalate 9 times further,
Right.
So you're stuck trying to work within this system, and play by their rules and actually make them afraid enough to listen to you. It's,
But I think
not
I
easy.
think it was a lot easier back then because
Yeah.
Even with the CBS News clip, they were basically like the equivalent of, like, they didn't say it, but the implication was, "Oh, this is a smart black man. We never
Right.
had that before." So like just the idea, like
And
he
he-
was intelligent and educated. So as
And
she
he
said,
very
that
specifically like made it to get like
Right.
you heard him. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't change his tone in any way. It was like cool, calm,
he was just-
collected.
right, very matter of fact, and he was like, the law will be applied to everybody equally,
Yeah.
regardless of color, which at that time was revolutionary. So given that, with Sheriff Amerson, you gotta give him props because, and as I said before, and I think even in the midst of today, how they've kind of whitewashed his legacy, I would argue, because it's like, oh, the first black sheriff.
Right.
No, yeah, he was the first black sheriff, but the idea that he wanted to treat everyone fairly in terms of handing out justice and anti-police brutality, and that, well,
Yeah, as much as
as much
Right.
as feasibly reasonable. But then again, the Klan aren't. Well, some members were part of the police, but so you can argue like Klan are not police. But regardless, like the idea of the law and justice must be applied fairly, despite of your race.
Well, it's like you could tell they were worried because, like, this is, I forget who's got this quote of, like, they always worry when minorities get to power, they'll do the same thing they did when they were the majority,
Right. But you see that kind of play out in a sense because Amerson had power, and allegedly he had people who were able to kind of do the dirty work, but do it well enough that, not to say he wasn't it, but they got scared. And I think that's the example that we kind of say on the show all the time. Like, your oppressors have to be scared of you in order to change. Like, having them sweet talk you and you listening to them with big hard eyes, it's not going to change matters for them. Like, they have to be like running fucking scared of you in order to be willing to make the changes that you want to see. So, but yeah, like I said, not a lot of information on him, at least from what I found. But I think this will be a good start, in terms of Black History Month, highlighting a person that, again, given the whitewashing, I think is still significant, in the policing system. And I think try to elevate it in a way beyond what we're seeing now. If anything, as I said, we kind of deviated from his legacy because, we're seeing this now, like the idea that the ICE agents who now live Alex Peretti, who murdered him, we know now were Latino.
Mm-hmm.
So, so we've kind of gone backwards in terms of having justice, like having people of color who are kind of aligning with white supremacy in the illusion of having power.
Yeah.
And are willing to murder others and their own in order to kind of be adjacent to that power.
Well, and that's by design at this point,
Right. But I think that's significant in terms of, Amerson, he wasn't with that, it seems. Like, he wanted to move beyond that. And the fact that, like, this is over 60 years later, we're still haven't moved the needle in that. But again, like, we don't talk about the root as far as the police and their role, which we'll get into later. But I think at least with Amerson, he tried to, and I'm not sure if he understood the role of the police, but I think given the position that he was in, he tried to um, he tried to break it in the way that he was able to in Alabama, which I think to the time, very remarkable.
Yeah.
So hats off to you, Sheriff Anderson, as you as we want to try and share your legacy, I think, with the respect it deserves. And hearing stories like this, plus others, is why we're demonetized. So if you want to support us, especially if you want to hear, actually, we'll probably want to do something like this a little more frequently outside of Black History Month. But let us know in the chat, do you know of Sheriff Amerson prior to this? What are your thoughts in terms of the legacy that he was trying to elevate in terms of the policing system in Alabama, but I think in a larger scope in the U.S. in general? What information do you know about him, if any? As I said, not a lot of information on the guy, but wanted to try my best to give a highlight to a man that, within the system that is oppressing us, he tried to break some of those chains in terms of freeing us from, how the systems that we want to kind of keep everyone locked up, pun intended. So don't forget to like and subscribe, and please share this clip once we clip it out to fight the suppression, and make sure you leave a comment and let us know what you think. And thank you for watching.
So, Julio, chat, how you holding up?
I think we have a few comments in the chat. Again, shout out to Jack's page for the $5. Thank you. She gave it to us a little earlier in the segment. So let's see. There were a couple. So Angel in the chat at the Handsome Cynic, shout out to you. Said, Negro, you could tell this is in the 60s. Also, Angel, the N-word being dropped so casually. Yep. I told you there was racism. Yep. At Kurt Boss Revolter said, that's right, Blazing Saddles spoofed this. I guess the new segment, the CBS news segment.
Well, not the whole principle. Like it's right. the opening principle of Blazing Saddles of dudes named Whitey, they hire him to be sheriff, black guy shows up, and it's like, oh shit, there's a whole scene with literally, riding in on his horse over the horizon. The sheriff's coming. Anyway, and the dude's trying to tell him that it's like an N-word. And every time, the bell rings, and they don't, they don't hear that guy, Anyway, it's amazing movie.
At Jacqueline, Jack H said, oppressor with a conscience, isn't that an oxymoron?
A little bit, for sure.
Yeah. And I think that's it. I see on YouTube.
Okay. Well, let me check the Rumbles, see if anyone, long-time listener, I've never heard of Sheriff Amerson before this. Violence is a last resort in self-defense. I don't know about that, bro. Sometimes that first punch is warranted, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But what else we got? Substack's going. Well, you ready for our next one? I'm ready.
I am.
So we've been covering ICE and what they've been doing for quite a minute now. But I brought this from Arturo Dominguez right? And, you know, I don't know if you've seen anything about like Fort Bliss in the news recently. Have you seen that?
No.
Okay.
No.
Well, it's one of many of these migrant detention centers, similar to like Alligator, Alcatraz, and things like that they've been shoving, you know, innocent people into. So, but he writes, with a record number of detainees and less oversight, migrant detention centers are on the brink of failure, which, you know, seems par for the course for American infrastructure. But in a show of complete disregard for human rights or the civil rights afforded to immigrants under the U.S. Constitution, the White House weaponized Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency is flooding its own infrastructure, pushing it to the brink of failure. Every detention center is currently facing a critical breakdown due to a 75% surge in the detained population in 2025, which has reached a record high of over 73,000 individuals today. The rapid expansion has overwhelmed the system's infrastructure with less oversight. Who would have thunk, Care Bear?
Yeah.
As inspections of detention facilities plummeted by over 36% in 2025, reports indicate that no federal facility lost funding, as prescribed by law, for failing to meet safety standards. Which I always found weird. That's like No Kids Left Behind, right? You know, you fail to meet safety standards and they take your funding for it, right? So how are you going to meet them? So it's always what that kind of reminded me of. But reports of extreme overcrowding and unsanitary conditions as some facilities reached 3 times their bed capacity. Their bed capacity. Like, which I'm sure their bed capacity is more than their capacity should be anyway.
Right.
Like, detainees have reported being held in freezing cells, forced to sleep on concrete floors, served food contaminated with worms and mold, and a lack of adequate medical care. Sounds like the U.S. prison system to me. That's what that sounds like. Recent reports indicate that ICE has stopped paying third-party medical providers for detainee care, instructing them to hold claims until at least late April 2026. This has led to critical neglect, with detainees reportedly denied insulin and basic medical attention for days. All of this has led to an unprecedented death toll. The detention system saw at least 32 deaths in 2025, the highest in decades. And in the first 3 weeks of 2026, 6 more people died in ICE custody. And I'm going to be the one to tell you, that's no accident at this point. Like, this is deliberate.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is great reset stuff. Just, you know, slightly different flavor. In an effort to handle the massive influx into an already broken and inhumane system, the Trump administration is opening massive tent cities on military bases, such as Fort Bliss, which now holds roughly 3,000 people in extreme weather conditions. A recent report from Senator John Ossoff's office detailed more than 1,000 human rights abuses. The report covered abuses including medical neglect, denial of clean water, and the abuse of pregnant women and children. Recently, a federal court ruled that the Department of Homeland Security cannot prevent lawmakers from conducting oversight of detention centers. And AOC will just cry outside its gates, I'm betting. That's the best you're going to get. So, the Chrome North Service Processing Center in Miami, Florida has experienced the most dramatic overcrowding. The facility was 3 times its rated capacity, approximately 1,961 detainees for 611 bed space. You want to do the math on that? Like, in mid-2025, detainees reported sleeping on cardboard boxes in visitation rooms and being piled into areas without access to bathrooms or water. Several videos were made in the facility last year. Me and Indy covered that on How Did We Miss That? You're welcome to go back and look at our coverage of that, highlighting how bad it's likely becoming since then. The video below is from summer of 2025. The man speaking is pleading for help. I always link articles in the description, so if you want to go check that video, please go to the description and enjoy yourself, you know? But Conditions at the South Texas Family Residential Center in Dilley, Texas have been described as inhumane by visiting lawmakers. Reports from early this month detailed rancid water that mothers must use for baby formula and food contaminated with bugs. In several instances, officials reportedly cut off water and internet access in response to detainee protests. Sounds like Israel's plan. The situation at Dilley has become so bad that the facility is currently battling a measles outbreak. What are they going to get? Consumption and tuberculosis next? Like, we're going to go with old school, old timey diseases? Jesus Christ. Black Plague, I'm sure, will be next. The Stewart Detention Center in Lumpkin, Georgia, is one of the largest migrant detention facilities in the country, over capacity, with reports of up to 100 people housed in rooms with only 60 beds. Has historically been a problem at Stewart. Many have described a dystopian environment where some detainees, including a double amputee, have been unable to access basic medical care for prosthetic limbs due to overcrowding and staff shortages. The latest inhumane detention facility is Camp East Montana in Fort Bliss, El Paso, Texas. The $1.2 billion tent city is currently the largest detention facility in the U.S., currently housing about 3,000 detainees in extreme El Paso weather conditions. Camp East Montana is built on a former military site with plans to expand its capacity to 5,000 people. So, I don't know if you remember, but tent cities with American presidents tend to not leave great legacies, you know? But that's just me. So, I mean, Hoovervilles, if anyone remembers those, like, and those were like voluntary, well, not voluntary, it was like, you know, economic problem. This is like deliberate tent city. It's worse. In addition to the new Fort Bliss detention centers, the Trump administration is creating new mega detention centers to address the bed shortage and overcrowding. The government is moving towards an industrialized model, purchasing massive warehouses for conversion into detention jails. This includes a 9,500 bed facility in Hutchins, Texas, and a proposed 8,500 bed site in El Paso, which become two of the largest jails in the world. Other detention facilities with problematic histories includes the Adams County Detention Center in Natchez, Mississippi, the South Texas Ice Processing Center in Pearsall, Texas, the Wynn Correctional Center in Winfield, Louisiana, and the Otay Mesa Detention Center in San Diego, California, with the Trump admin purchasing at least 23 warehouses for migrant detentions. The inhumanity is projected to get worse, with even less oversight. This is one of those warehouses, just a bleak box of depression. And I know they've been like modeling these after like Bukele's fucking CCOT, where they keep the lights on 24/7 shit. Just straight torture facilities at this point. So, despite government ownership of these facilities, aside from local and county jails, they're nearly all operated by private corporations. The GEO Group and Core Civic benefit the most from profiting off inhumanity, alongside other key operators like LaSalle Corrections Management and Training Corporation and Aetna Technical Services. Other corporations profiting from this provide ancillary services like broad surveillance and tracking of immigrants, and U.S. citizens and transport services are broad. Thoughts, Care Bear? I mean, like, I don't think people look at this stuff.
No.
Like, ever,
No.
you know?
Well, obviously I think with Alligator Alcatraz, obviously, because that was just so horrific, that obviously that got a lot of attention, but also keep in mind, like, a lot of these detention centers have existed forever prior to Trump. So,
yeah,
you know, obviously with the Republic or the big bad boogeyman that is Trump, people are talking about this more. But when the Democrat is in office, it's like,
yeah, it all
not
quiets
even
down
a
again, right?
discussion. Right. So so these places exist regardless. And, so it's just kind of, depending on the party, it's just how much these stories get highlighted or not. But again, it's the idea that these places, regardless of who the president is, exist. And we have to remember Biden and Obama have deported way more people than Trump has, although I feel like Trump is trying to surpass their records at this point, just because of the disdain that he has for Obama in particular. But but I think it's just the idea of like, why do these places exist to begin with? Which again kind of ties into the prison industry, especially the private prison industry that profits out of the more people that you're able to kind of place in them. And then the corporations that essentially back them. That could be another segment for another time. But I'm sure we've talked about that anyway on the show at some point.
Yeah.
But no, I think the lesser known ones that have not been that, even that you mentioned tonight, I didn't even know.
Yeah.
So it just shows how little that we do know about these detention facilities or concentration camps, like I guess now because of Trump, because they kind of upgraded to that. But it's still the same thing, just depending on who's president. It's just a matter of the wording.
I've always said he puts
a little bit
ugly face to ugly policies,
right,
so,
which have existed prior to.
Correct.
So, like Trump in of itself is not the issue. He's just exploiting what has already been in place.
Symptom of the problem.
More often than not, which again, often, not always, but more often than not, is influenced by Democratic policy.
Yep. Correct. I'm with you. But I definitely think people are not talking about the conditions and the actual ramifications and logistics of what they're supposedly asking for, So, but, not that anybody with IQ points is doing that, But anyway, talking about this kind of stuff is certainly why YouTube decides we shouldn't make any money off our show. So you can say screw YouTube and go to code-fee.com/Indie News Network. Scan that QR code on your screen. Our links are always in the description below, while, Ko-fi still allows us to make some profit here and there. But if you can't give, you're like the poors, like ourselves, like and subscribe. Share the video. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Otherwise, thanks for watching. So, moving right through them. Let's see. Jacqueline in the chat. Any coverage of this by Legacy Media? I bet not.
Of course not.
I think they are covering Fort Bliss, but it's all the coverage is super like Trump. Like that's as far as they go with why it's bad. So surface level shit.
Angel in the chat. That's where my anger comes in. When a Democrat is in the White House, these same white liberals that are freaking out over this don't give a shit.
Yep. Accord Lord, fucking warehouse jails. Facepalm. That's what's crazy to me. The industrialize the problem. That's, treat it like a business. Yeah. Private fucking prison system nonsense. Like, same shit every week. Like fucking
capitalism.
I don't know how I'm gonna break that button. That button gets broken. I have to hit that button way too much. Like fucking
yay, capitalism.
Yay. Anyway, over on the Rumbles, Nature Boy saying Orange Man bad. Orange Man bad. Agreed. Like, isn't Fort Bliss named after a Confederate general? I wouldn't put it past them. Sounds about right.
Right.
So, and then I have to explain my mother worked at Jefferson Davis University, but that's neither here nor there. It was the South. They changed the name eventually. It's now not that. It's now Gulf Coast Community College. So, you know, whatevers. But, like, yep, of course, many in the admin deserve to be locked up for other reasons for longer. Locked up is, you know, merciful at this point.
Right.
Like, I think there's some other solutions. You know, like Vlad the Impaler had some options, you know, a few of them. Like, we can come up with some inventive stuff to deal with that problem. Anyway, Substack's hanging in there, you know, people are jumping in and out of that. But you ready to get to our next one? I'm ready.
Yep.
Ooh.
So if you've been on the show at any point within the last few years, we've shared many times, or at least within segments, how our institution of policing is based on slave patrols. And if you watched my segment on the Barbados Slave Codes, I believe that was back in the fall, you will know that a lot of our policing in the States is based upon the institution of slavery that was essentially experimented on in Barbados, which is the island where my dad's family is from. So you can argue a lot of where we get our standards is based from Europe. So, but obviously, and I'm sure you guys are smart enough to make this connection of how slave patrols back in the day have now evolved to what we're seeing in ICE currently.
Yep.
So I think this is kind of, again, a good evergreen segment just for that reminder, especially moving forward in terms of how, the call is to abolish ICE, which does not go far enough, in my opinion. We should abolish policing in terms of the significance of why we have policing in the first place, and rebuild it in terms of something that's actually a little bit more humane and truly one that leads to justice for people instead of oppression and scare tactics in terms of protecting power and maintaining control. So we bought this article from the Black Agenda Report. This is written by Jacqueline Luqman, who writes Continuity of Social Control from Slave Patrols to Policing to ICE, where she adds, to understand the violence of contemporary immigration enforcement, one must trace its lineage directly to antebellum slave patrols, a system founded on racial terror and complete state control. And if you don't mind clicking, because these are, font is very small, so I have to read it from my screen. But Jacqueline continues. The Trump regime's anti-immigrant program is being carried out by the Department of Homeland Security, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, Customs and Border Control, and local police in cities like Minneapolis, Austin, and New Orleans, among others. Many of the people recruited by these agencies today are members of the white supremacist militias who were involved in the January 6th attempted insurrection and were later pardoned, who have been deputized en masse by these agencies that relaxed or eliminated application and acceptance requirements to grow their battalion of race warriors swiftly. Supporters of these enforcement actions insist they are merely enforcing the law and dismiss the kidnapped and warehoused individuals as criminals for being illegally in the country, for resisting detention, or for trying to disrupt or evade apprehension, regardless of their age or medical condition, or the location they were abducted from, such as a courthouse at their legal immigration hearing. And many, including children as young as 5, as we saw with Liam Ramos a few weeks ago, have been detained or deported in violation of court orders prohibiting both. Even when these raids have resulted in the violent death of potential detainees or community members trying to protect others, a significant portion of the MAGA base and nativist forces within even marginalized communities remain steadfast in their support. Of all the public execution of Alex Prelli by immigration officials has angered many Second Amendment adherents, including the NRA, in the MAGA base to the point that they are calling for a full and independent investigation into it. The rest of Trump supporters not only blame the victims of their own deaths, but mock them, claiming they deserve to die for not being perfectly and unquestionably obedient to law enforcement at all times, despite not knowing if they are really legitimate law enforcement officials as they hide their identities as they carry out orders that are far short of allegedly settled constitutional law. Why the seemingly sudden hypocrisy of the MAGA movement specifically, and many others who oppose open or even liberal or moderate immigration policies, shocks many, the reality is that despite efforts to disconnect the present from the past, there are profound, significant, and thoroughly documented historical and ideological links between slave patrols, monopolicing, and DHS, ICE, CBP.
Customs and Border
If we
Patrol.
really knew the history, if we really knew the history of this country, little of what is happening today would surprise us. For the nearly 250 years of legalized chattel slavery in the U.S., slave patrols were the first formalized system of law enforcement in much of the South. Mandated to serve as a mechanism of control of enslaved and free Africans, slave patrols existed to protect the economic system and super profits that slavery produced. Slave patrols operated in the same void between legality and morality that slavery itself existed in, facilitated by established law while also being deeply immoral and grossly inhumane. They enforced the legal but morally reprehensible statutes that severely limit the autonomy, movement, assembly, and education of enslaved people. And like today's anti-immigration offensive, they enforced those morally dubious laws in the most violent and morally repugnant ways possible, because the focus was not on upholding the law, but legitimizing the racist social hierarchy. Slave patrols roamed the southern roads around plantations and where enslaved and free Africans lived. In some cities, the enslaved in urban areas lived in a separate, segregated area rather than on a land-intensive plantation, all day and at night, looking for Black people to stop and demand papers from. These papers proved the free status or the permission to travel of free and enslaved Africans. They broke into and raided free Africans' homes, stopped Black people on the street in any context and location, and were legally expected to immediately and violently punish those found without papers. But slave patrollers were also known to reject, steal, or destroy papers that were supposed to keep free people from being re-enslaved, and enslaved people from being accused of escaping and being either sold back into slavery for the profit of the slave catcher or severely punished as a runaway. The practice of surveilling, over-policing, randomly stopping, and demanding documentation of Black and brown people suspected of allegedly criminality is not a unique feature of modern policing. These are the tactics established by the slave patrols that shape all aspects of policing today. When the abolition of slavery led to the formal disbanding of slave patrols, their functions and personnel did not vanish. A mandate to control the enslaved African population evolved as Black codes, and then Jim Crow laws, established a new system of economic exploitation to replace slavery across the former Confederacy. The post-Civil War police forces in the South enforced these new forms of radicalized control over Black labor and movement to protect the property and profits of capitalists still making money off of their exploitation, to provide ideological comfort to white workers, mainly the descendants of poor European immigrants themselves, that their place in the capitalistic system was protected from competition with Black workers, and putting clear boundaries on the realization on full citizenship rights for Black people that the 14th Amendment may have held promise for. Vagrant laws came to this country with the colonists from English common law and were used to control the poor, beggars, and those deemed idle through the criminalization of their poverty. These laws were applied in the same way in the colonies and then in the expanded United States, criminalizing the poor and destitute. Prohibitions on loitering, wandering around without any apparent lawful purpose, were part of the program of poverty or idleness as a criminal offense, were also enforced against the economically excluded, which led to vaguely worded vagrancy, loitering, and suspicious persons laws that targeted people considering objectionable or out of place in some way, rather than any particular conduct. But criminalizing poverty only produced more opportunities for private enterprise to profit off of the punishment of the poor for being poor, which has always been a feature of designating behavior that is not violent, antisocial, or destructive to others in a capitalistic society.
It
a
is
crime.
Wednesday, my dudes.
Oh, wrong one.
Capitalism.
Whoa. That button.
Oh. This is similar to the modern private prison corporations that realize massive profits through mass incarceration of working class and poor Africans who are their primary targets, but also folds in indigenous Americans and migrants from imperialism from mostly global South countries in the US today. Capitalism continues the exploitation that creates a poverty that millions are denied the ability to escape, and imperialism continues to destroy the home countries of people who are forced to leave for their survival, only to be thrown into for-profit concentration camps in the US or one of its vassal countries like El Salvador and its massive CCOT facility, willing to profit from the gambit as well. The core historical directive of policing has consistently been the defense of capital, land, and economic status through the brutal control of the working class, poor, and radicalized and other marginalized among them, not the universal protection and service of the community. Tactics like racial profiling, broken windows policing, excessive and pervasive surveillance, and the disproportionate use of excessive force and extrajudicial executions that are rarely punished are all deployed to maintain the physical and social segregation today that was initially enforced by slave patrols, plantation militias, and a deputization of white citizens to police the enslaved. But these were not merely unofficial or accepted practices carried out by racist white, local, or state authorities. Racist and oppressive policing is backed by legal and judicial precedent that is in itself foundational in its justification of racial discrimination to facilitate economic exploitation. Supreme Court decisions like Dred Scott versus Sanford that denied Black people citizenship and gave opportunity to Chief Justice Taney to declare that white men had no obligation to observe any rights for Black people, and Plessy versus Ferguson established separate but equal as a legitimate social structure, even though the separate was never equal, and state and local ordinances that limited access to housing, education, movement, and economic stability for Black people provided federal validation for the brutality and bloodshed used to enforce discriminatory state and local laws for generations, leading to the modern expression of these abuses in immigration enforcement today. The latest example can be seen in the September 2025 Supreme Court ruling codifying racial profiling in immigration stops into law. The ruling in Nome versus Vasquez Perdomo, in which Justice Brett Kavanaugh opined, that Hispanic persons' ethnicity can be used as a factor in providing reasonable suspicion for immigration agents to stop and question people whenever they encounter them. It's a licensed immigration forces needed to carry out the spectacle of racial profiling and resulting violence that had been dubbed Kavanaugh stops. While the brutality that has ensued from these stops has led to Kavanaugh to try to claim that these outcomes are not what he meant to happen, the damage is and continues to be done. The contemporary practices of DHS, ICE, CBP of house-to-house raids, raids of houses of worship, mass detentions, violence against deportees in public and private, including sexual violence and abuse of children, and family separations, draw unmistakable comparisons to the operations of slave patrols and other historical modes of racial control. As horrific as the public executions of white Minnesotans Renee Good and Alex Peretti are, they were preceded by the murders of Keith Porter Jr., Brian Gaston Raymond, Maria Ange Blaze, Jesus Molina Vieva, and dozens more under the latest regime's immigration policies. That the deaths of white people spurred the demands for accountability and even abolition among a larger portion of the population after the deaths of more than 30 non-white people were not responded to in the same way, if at all, is also a byproduct of the racial bias inherent in this country's history that has been ingrained in the psyche of its people. Even the good white people who do not want to change do not realize how they've been conditioned to not care about the repression of the other, and only respond to when that repression shows up on their door or the door of someone they can personally identify with, which, didn't I say this, I think, last week?
So have I.
That, like, granted, what happened to Renee Good and Alex Peretti, awful. But Keith Porter was murdered, I believe, before New Year's.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, I believe this happened in LA. But the reason why that wasn't reported as much, if at all, was because it wasn't recorded. That's really the only difference. But even so, the idea that Renee Good and Alex Peretti were basically the catalyst, and I also said, you know, like, you can make the argument that Renee Good, even though she was white, was a lesbian. So that she was kind of easier to kind of throw under the bus because within that identity role. But because Alex Peretti was white, cis, male, a lot harder to smear him, although they're trying. So, but because the rest were othered, meaning more melanated, not as reported as much, if at all, even in our space, I would argue. And you know, to be fair, we didn't report on Keith Porter either, but I believe we acknowledged the fact that there were others who were murdered previous to Renee Good and Alex Peretti. But yeah, it's still the idea of like, you care now because it's white people who are being murdered without any rhyme or reason. But when it comes to people of color, it's a lot easier to dismiss. Sorry if I offended some people, but I don't care. Anyway, the history of policing in this country compels us to understand that removing the present figurehead of the U.S. regime will do little to end the suffering of the people targeted by this centuries-long-old system of social, racial, and ultimately economic control. The only thing that will change this material reality for all of us is a socialist revolution led by people who are the most impacted by this centuries-long program. The people rightly and righteously angry about the deaths of the latest victims of this system are ready to launch a nationwide general strike to elevate the demand to abolish ICE after a well-supported general strike in Minneapolis that saw many cities across the country carry out solidarity demonstrations. However, the meaningless reforms, like body cameras and limits to use force that House Democrats demanded as they voted to continue funding ICE, will not achieve the desired outcome, even if Senate Democrats do what they promise and refuse to vote for the funding bill. So, where does this leave the people fighting in the streets? Simply put, the people must move beyond simply demanding to abolish ICE and even the police, as has been the demand among Black radicals for decades. Rather, the people must pivot fully towards confronting and abolishing capitalism and this entire system that still needs slave patrol, police / ICE violence to protect it from those it exploits the most, and everyone who would stand with them in defense of humanity. for all of us to live free, capitalism, not just ICE, must die.
Finally, those capitalist pigs will pay for their crimes, eh? Hey, comrades, eh?
God, if only, you know?
I mean, as I said, this is for our family, old hat.
Yep.
We know, like, you guys know this.
Tale as old as time.
But any thoughts on the article?
I like that they made it, made it very specific that even those, like, slave catchers were doing it for capitalism and profit's sake. Like they're doing now with everything. Like that brutality is for rich folk. That's it. And we'll I have a clip at some point from what was his name? Hold on, I'm scrolling up to find it. Where he said specifically that, like, if I did these actions for the rich and powerful, John Brown, right? If I did those actions for the rich and powerful, they'd be, praising me. Like,
right.
Now, like, if you do it for the poor, like, every bootlicker in the world would have made sure Robin Hood hung,
Right. I'm glad that we read this article because obviously, especially among the mainstream independent channels, they're like, abolish ICE, abolish ICE, abolish ICE. And even though many of them talk about capitalism and how exploitative it is, I don't think they go into it in terms of the police, as far as I know. So, but this is why, so it's really bigger than abolishing ICE. You need to abolish the very system that ICE/policing/ the slave patrols was created.
Right.
And if you really believe that, and I know people who personally know this and could say this, the idea of like, oh, our policing system is based on slave patrols, but will cap for the police every single time. Like, every single time, like, it's always like, oh, but we need the police to protect us. And who's saying this? Is it people who are rich or the people who are adjacent to the rich that feel like they need to have that protection from everyone else? Even though they may not necessarily say in that way, but that's what they're alluding to. So, but those are the conversations that we need to have more of, is why does our policing system exist in this country in the first place? And what do we need to do to abolish this system in of itself? Because again, it's all tied to capitalism and the exploiting of people, especially those of color, to the benefit of the rich. So, I mean, I don't know how many more times we need to say this, but I guess enough. But just be mindful of, especially these bigger channels and even people in our space that should know better, who may not be saying that in terms of the root issue surrounding ICE, surrounding policing. It's all tied back to capitalism at the end of the day, and how we need to get rid of that, or at least, I don't want to say reform, but abolish it to have a more people-centered movement around protecting our communities.
Agreed. Tale as old as time,
Tale as old as time. Yeah. But as I said, I think this will make so those of you who are new, who may not have known this, share this clip. Like, have your friends learn a thing or two about policing, and the demand should be greater than abolish ICE. Like, that's the floor. Honestly, that it's literally just, it's nothing. And reading this, especially for those of you who are new, that's the reason why the Democrats are pushing for cameras and all that kind of shit. And like, think about it. If cameras worked, like, we shouldn't be seeing an increase in crime. right? If anything's gone worse. So obviously, like, having cameras isn't helping. Hell, some of these ICE agents are recording themselves shooting people. So, like...
So, I forget where I read it recently, but essentially it was the cops that wanted those to begin with, right? And then they convinced a bunch of Democrats to, like, join on. But, you know, their first thing they was like, imagine facial recognition and, you know, that kind of technology attached to these, which is exactly what they're doing right now. That's what they're doing. So,
but again, benefits from the tech.
Yep.
So, you know, so again, like, it's our version of the Jesus answer. Especially given the place where he was raised, going by another name, but you know who we're talking about. So, you know, but again, it benefits the corporations that will profit from the tech that the police will use to oppress us. And they're throwing it in our face, basically like, yeah, you can record me. I don't give a shit. I'll record you back. And nothing's going to happen to me. So, you know, but again, good story, especially for those who may not be aware of the function of police. Share this and let us know what they think. And that's why we're demonetized, because we get to talk about this shit. But regardless, if you want to support us, please, first of all, like, share, and subscribe. But then if you want to help us financially so we're able to continue to report on stories like this and not having to depend on YouTube, scan the QR code you see on your screen or go to the Ko-fi link you see at the bottom of your screen. Or if you're in your YouTube chat right now in your live, type ! Donate, all one word, and the Ko-fi link will pop up. You can also find the link as well as the links to Substack, PayPal, and Cash App if you want to give that way in the description on every segment. And yeah, thanks for watching.
Cool. Over on the Rumble, whereas longtime listener says, whereas slave patrols caught runaways and returned them to plantations, ICE is there to round up migrant workers when they get too feisty and demand pay, which still amounts to enforcing slavery. So, yep. Go start. ICE equals inner city executioners. Pretty much. And of course, bringing up the 13th Amendment and the movie Birth of a Nation, which depicted slave patrols in their brutality. So, yes, sir. Anything over on the YouTubes?
Yes. So, Accord Lord, it's truly amazing how many don't tread on me types turn bootlickers in a matter of a day.
Yep.
Also, Accord Lord sounds like is not real.
Yep.
Yep. Jacqueline Jack H said the don't tread on me types are usually the ones that think they should be doing the treading.
Who was the one who said it was our boot recently? That was like, that's our boot. Tim Pool, beanie motherfucker. That guy. That shitbag. Anyway, he's like, oh, it's our boot. We voted that boot in. It's our boot. I want to lick it. Tasty boot. Fucking disgusting.
Jacqueline Jack H said, what's the point of having cameras if law enforcement agents are never held accountable in most cases? Exactly.
Yep.
Quarter said, great segment. So thank you. We try here. We want to educate as well as hopefully entertain. So,
well, on to our next segment. Speaking of, friend of the show, Pasta Jardula. You know him, you love him, you've seen him around. He's been in, the great state of Minnesota, where protests and ICE brutality have been happening. And he wrote an article, and since the rest of independent media seems to not know how to fucking read anymore, we're going to. It's very simple. right? But Pasta writes, when he traveled to Minnesota, he had 3 clear objectives. First, he wanted to talk directly to the protesters. Second, he wanted to understand why they were there. And third, he wanted to learn why they hoped to achieve. Shit, Pasta, I think. What is it? Who, what, where, why, how? Like the basic 5? Like it.
Right.
This used to be simple. For weeks, mainstream media, particularly conservative outlets, but some independent voices as well, had pushed the narrative that these protesters were paid agitators, anti-American radicals obstructing law enforcement who needed to be dealt with. That claim stood out to Pasta. It felt like propaganda designed to dismiss their message before anyone even heard it. So Pasta did what journalists are supposed to do. He went on the ground. His first stop was the Federal Whipple building in downtown Minneapolis, ground zero for much of the protest activity. Some nights ended in tear gas, some did in arrests, but for the most part it functioned as a tense standoff between ICE and the community. The first person he interviewed was a lawyer, not an activist organizer, not someone holding a megaphone, just a citizen who felt compelled to show up. He told me he believed the government was overreaching, that ICE was targeting neighbors rather than dangerous criminals. He argued that the agency itself routinely operated outside the spirit and sometimes the letter of the law. Most of all, he felt compelled by conscience. And before he even asked, he addressed the rumor. No, he wasn't being paid. The next day at the memorial site of Alex Preddy, Pasta spoke with a young Somali woman. She immediately rejected the idea that she was being paid. When he asked why she was there, her answers echoed the lawyer's. These are our workers, she said, our babysitters, our mechanics, the people at our restaurants. They're part of our community. She believed the people detained were not the hardened criminals described by federal officials, but ordinary members of society. She said she was there to protect the vulnerable. Then came a veteran, someone who knew Preddy, again, not paid, again, concerned about civil liberties, again, describing ICE as an institution he believed trampled constitutional protections. Then a nonprofit director, same answer, same denial of payment, same reasoning, love of neighbor, protection of civil liberties, opposition to what they saw as lawless enforcement. By the 4th interview, the pattern was undeniable. Every single person Pasta spoke with rejected the idea that they were there for a paycheck, and every single one gave thoughtful, consistent reasons for showing up. That mattered, because when you dismiss people as paid agitators, you don't just insult them, you erase their motives, you flatten complex human emotion into a caricature, and that's not journalism. The most difficult conversation Pasta had was with a young Latino man who asked not to show his face. His father had been detained inside a McDonald's he worked at, not for murder, not for assault, not for any violent offense. His only violation was being undocumented. The young man was heartbroken. His father, he believed, would soon be deported. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't burning anything. He wasn't paid. He was grieving. And I definitely wanted to bring that. You know, I feel like we should let the men speak for themselves. You know? So we're going to do that.
When you're ready. How you doing? Craig Pasta Jardula here at the Federal Whipple building. We have a situation where a gentleman, I'm going to let him explain to you. We're going to keep his name anonymous for the time being, but he has a family member that was abducted by ICE. Can you tell us a little bit about your story and what happened?
Yeah, my dad was just working his normal day-to-day job, throwing the garbage out in the lobby, when an ICE agent went inside and singled him out and grabbed him and took him yesterday around 2 p.m.
So he was working in a restaurant, and an ICE agent just came in there, identified that he was a man of color, Latino, and then grabbed him off the streets. Didn't have a warrant or anything.
That I believe so? No warrant.
No warrant.
Yeah.
So what's been going on now with your situation? Have you heard what's going on with your father? Because I also heard he had some health issues, and you wanted to help get him maybe some medication. It was difficult to do that.
Yeah, since yesterday I was trying to give him his medication, but an ICE agent, I gave it to an ICE agent, but he just smirked at me, and that gave me like a sign saying that he wasn't going to give it to him because he was like basically laughing in my face. And today I came back around 6 or 7 in the morning, and I've been out here ever since trying to find help. And I found two doctors that would help me bring in the medication for my dad. And we all walked in there, and we successfully gave him the medication.
How did you find these two people to help you?
I was just out here at the Whipple building. People are out here protesting, and I walked up to a couple people, and they pointed me to a few directions where I could go to get some help.
So this was like random help. You were just desperate. You were just wanting to help your father out, and you just spoke to some people, and some people guided you along the way to some people who helped?
That's correct.
So what has happened since you've gotten this help?
Ever since I got the help, we've been in the building. We got my dad his medicine, and I was able to talk to him, but they're not allowing visitation, so I don't know how he is physically, but I just know that he's in there, and he sounds like he's doing all right.
So what is the plans? Did they tell you what they're going to do? Are they going to release him? They're going to deport him? What did they say they're going to do?
They're not releasing any information out to me. I keep asking them. They're not saying anything at all.
Have they? I heard there was some news that they said they were going to deport him tomorrow. Is that true? Have you gotten any information that way?
I don't want to answer that.
You don't have to answer that. Thank you so much. I understand. So what is the next step? You're just going to stay out here until you can maybe see your father, until you can make sure that he's gotten help?
Yeah, I'm going to stay out here until I make sure my dad is 100% good and he's got the help he needs.
Can't hear Reef.
Oh, I was saying hopefully Pasta kept connects so he can reach back in. Get info, make sure things are going to be good, especially with what we covered in our last segment. Conditions in these places are not good. So I feel for that guy. But to finish up, on the second night, Pasta went to Maple Grove, where protesters gathered outside of Spring Hill Suites Hotel. Border Patrol Sector Chief Greg Bovino was rumored to be staying there. The previous night, another nearby hotel... Yes, exactly. Bovine. Nearby hotel had been vandalized and 2 arrests were made, but at this location, what Pasta saw was whistles, drums and pots and pans. Protesters made noise. Police arrived in full tactical gear, local, state, and federal, heavily armed. To hear some outlets describe this as a war zone was surreal. One side had percussion instruments. The other side looked ready for a Fallujah. Did you see any of the, back and forth the media had on that kind of stuff? With that, where it's even the ICE people were like, oh, it's traumatizing, the noise. Put in some earplugs, idiot.
See that, but I've seen, at least early on, protesters, once they found out, where ICE agents were staying, what hotels they would, and I've said this, but I said this generally for politicians too. It's why should they sleep comfortably while we are miserable?
You ain't gonna get no sleep because of y'all. You ain't gonna get no sleep because of me.
Exactly that.
Yep. I'm with you, dude.
You should be sleeping comfortable when people are suffering.
I think Fort Fisher's got some footage of those protesters too, if you want to go find that. I think someone made a little, leaf blower air whistle. That one was good. I like that one. But an unlawful assembly was declared. Tear gas was deployed. A handful were arrested for refusing to disperse. But Pasta saw no firearms from protesters, no rocks thrown, no property damage at that site, yet the war zone narrative persists. The memorial for Alex Preddy changed Pasta's perspective. Every day, ordinary Minnesotans visited the site, not activists, not paid operatives, families, community members, people visibly shaken. This wasn't simply protesters versus ICE, it was grief layered over politics, a community trying to process trauma. That nuance rarely makes national headlines. Pasta also visited Modern Times Cafe, now calling itself Postmodern Times, a leftist cafe that became something of a gathering space for activists. The owner made a controversial decision, shifting to a donation-only model and publicly stating he would not financially support what he believed was enforcement harming his community. He even refused service to federal agents. You may disagree with this stance, many will, but his actions weren't about a paycheck. It was all about conviction. I think was a good choice in my idea is to be good for you, dude. On my final day, nearly 100,000 people gathered downtown. This is one of the largest Pasta seen in person, and he's covered a lot of events, and we've been there, right with him, covering it from our little home bases. But it didn't look corporate, no slick signage, no mass-produced branding. Most signs were handmade, cardboard and markers, personal messages. People brought cookies, egg rolls, hot cocoa, tea. Felt less like a riot, more like a neighborhood potluck with a political message. They believed ICE was harming their community, whether you agree or not. I think that belief was sincere. Why were they there? They believed ICE was acting unlawfully and harming their neighbors. Every single person Pasta interviewed denied being paid, showed no signs of being anything other than ordinary people moved by conviction. This is my thing that I'll probably speak to Pasta when he comes on soon, but what did they hope to achieve? What did they achieve? Some wanted ICE abolished, others simply wanted reform, but almost all said the same thing. They wanted their families and neighbors to feel safe again. You know? So to not live in fear, to not be profiled, to not be abducted, at the end of the week, what stuck Pasta most wasn't division, it was sincerity. Minnesota's not a caricature. It's people aren't props in a cable news narrative, although they are being used as such. They are Americans wrestling with what kind of country they want to live in. Thoughts, Care Bear?
You know what? Just with that last sentence, I don't think it's wrestling with the idea of what country they want to live in. I think is a lot of it is the realization that the country is not what they believe it to be.
Yeah. For a lot of them, I'm sure.
For a lot of them. Like, if you're a person of color, especially if you're black, we've been new.
It's like, oh, this shit can happen to me too. Reality. Fuck, I better do something.
Right. And again, and again, the idea now is people are now more concerned because when you see a black person getting pulled over by the cops, especially if you're white, you're not going to think, oh, that's going to happen to me.
Yeah.
Like, you just usually feel, oh, that's something that happens to them that will never happen to me. But now it's happening to them. Now they care more because they realize, oh, I'm not above it. Like, the police are not even going to protect me anymore. And in many cases, I'm the same color as them. I'm the same complexion as them. And they're not even, hell, it's people of color that will do that to me.
Uh-huh.
So even I am not safe. So, I think really that's what it is. It's the idea of like, oh, America is not the land of the free, the home of the brave, as we've been propagandized to believe. That's kind of where I think a lot of the disbelief is coming from. You would think, given, I don't want to say Judge George Floyd is not limited to that, but given like all the things that we've seen in terms of shootings, like within the last 15, 20 years, you would think that people would be a little bit more aware by now of the reality of that is America. But I don't know. I think we're easily distracted that we don't think about that or in a prolonged way.
Yeah.
Like, we just see it as an isolated incident and then move on. But the idea, like, this keeps happening and happening and happening and happening and happening, and things are seemingly getting worse and not better. And I think especially now, like, we're at a turning point, given that we have Trump again, given that the economy's shit, given that, like, we're losing our allies, well, or if they were allies to begin with, like, worldwide, like, people are at the wit's end, and all of this stuff is now coming to a forefront now, being the realization, like, oh, we're not as great of a country as we believe to be. That it's not just limited to those people who may or may not be responsible for the actions that our police are causing them, or rather, it is the result of, I don't care who you are, as I'm here to protect the power structure that is here. So everybody is up for grabs now. That's really the only difference now, is that it's happening to people who are seemingly safe.
Yeah. Well, and more people should be out there talking to these people. Pasta adds, whether you agree with them or not, they deserve to be heard. And all he simply did was listen to them. It's simple stuff.
And you know what? And I've said this. I know I said this last week, but I've said this many times. But I just had this thought because I was reminded of like, there's a lot of Black influences in particular saying like, oh, it's not a fight, we're sticking out of it. And I get that.
I don't know how that's not. I don't know how it's not your fight. Like they're gonna round you up too.
But but you know what? Here's the thing, though. I think I said this on the show like a few months ago. So, so you remember when, like, I basically ran into an ice raid, like, at my gym. I think this was back in October. Like, I was literally walking to the gym, and like, there was a huge crowd outside of the building where my gym is, and like, people were screaming and yelling at. I think it was 3 or 4 ICE agents who were trying to abduct somebody, and like. The people there just were like, "Get the F out!"
Get the fuck out of here!
And basically, right, and so I got into that, yelling and whatever at them, and I said a few people saw me on like I guess TikToks or Instagram clips that were posted after the fact, and I think I remember, and I think I definitely said this to you, I think on the show, like I think a couple of weeks later, I was working out, and then this random guy, never saw him before, but came up to me, and he said, "Hey, I saw you, yelling, Latino guy." Like he said, "Thank you, for protecting my community." And I didn't do anything. It was just, I saw. I saw ICE. I became part of the crowd. Hell, I recorded some of it for the show. And we made it in short, so you can check it out on our playlist. But I didn't do anything special. I was just there. I was just present in the moment, and this is my community that I'm fighting for, and I don't want people to be spirited away without the right protocol. So I did what I had to do. I didn't do anything. But here was this Latino guy who was thanking me for that. And so and I think we have to rethink what it needs to be actively on the sidelines.
Right.
Like, because I feel like a lot of Black people might feel like, oh, we're not going to lead this march in a way that we did back in, the civil rights.
Civil rights.
That could be that could be the call for some of you. But I saw a friend post this on Instagram, and I think she made a very good point. One of the easiest ways that you can help, learn CPR first aid.
Right.
Take a class. Because granted, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to get hurt by these things. And if enough people are able to administer first aid, that will be a huge help.
Yeah, if they let you.
Like, if they let you. Right. But either way, like, it will be a valuable,
super important skill
to help people, especially if they're gassed or if they get cut, like running or whatever. You be in the position to support them better. Especially given how many, if in the medical field, might be overwhelmed. With the casualties that are inflicted upon by these thugs. Check in on your neighbors. I said this before. Check in on your neighbors in your neighborhood and see if they're okay. If there's anything that they need, that you can either buy their groceries, maybe take their kids to school, because many of them are living in fear right now of being.
There's a very famous, person who said, by any means necessary. That's also what he meant. Any and all resistance. So
So I think we have to rethink in a lot of ways what it means being out on the front lines. Sure, if Black people are saying, I don't want to necessarily be in the front lines because we don't want to be targeted and we don't want to be the face, that I get, given how the media will kind of misconstrue it and create a narrative around like Black people in particular that is not helpful to the cause of liberation. That I totally understand. But to kind of sit back and watch and not be present in what is happening, I don't think is what's being called for us either. And people can feel a way about that, but I don't care. Like, if especially if they're a neighbor or a friend, or even if not, just being there as a citizen or a community member, you have agency within the people in community that you should be caring for and checking in for. So the idea to me to just kind of sit back and allow the world go by while you isolate yourself out of fear, or just it also kind of comes off as petty to me.
And
Like,
privileged at the same
and
time.
privileged. Exactly.
So,
You know, I think so. I definitely agree with Pasta here in terms of, you know, like, sometimes the best thing you can do is just show up
right.
and ask, how can I help you?
Literally.
Like, especially in the aftermath. So,
Yep.
but yeah, the idea of people just kind of sitting back, I'm not with that. Like, you have to engage in some way, shape, or form, and it doesn't have to be like gun toting, like, necessarily. Again, if you're called to that, go off.
Yep. That's for people like me. You know, I'm fine with that
for
role.
most of us, I would argue it's behind the scenes, checking on your neighbors, offering help, support, or at minimum, like, shout out to Pasta, just listening to them, hearing their stories, like humanizing them, record it, share it, like, because again, it's going to be misconstrued in the mainstream media, like, oh, these people, like, especially among the MAGA types, like, bring the humanity to the situation in terms of the reality of what they're going through and like their families being taken away or getting hurt.
But we don't have time for rational solutions.
Like, I'm with you, dude. And talking about these things is certainly why YouTube's demonetized us, as well as they have Pasta. So you could go to ko-fi.com/Indie News Network, scan that QR code on your screen, and you can give a few dollary dues if you are so inclined. Otherwise, do all the algorithm stuff that supposedly helps us. Like and subscribe, share the video, leave a comment, let us know what you think. Allegedly, all those things help. Otherwise, thanks for watching. We did it, Care Bear.
I think you should definitely clip that Pasta clip and make it short.
Will do.
You know, and again, shout out to Pasta. Thank you, Pasta.
Yeah, dude.
For your work on the ground.
We'll have you on soon. Talk more about it.
Come on.
So
we'll love to have you on.
We'll schedule some stuff. But I think coming up next is maybe boats smashing another boat Sunday if Indy gets back from his travels. But you know, otherwise, follow the Twitters, follow the Substacks. Links are in the description below. At Get Any News on the Twitter. Go follow Pasta at Yo Pasta on the Twitters. You know, definitely got to wrench Pasta too. I got to figure out how to do that. There is a way, I do believe. But I'll do that after. Yeah, go follow Pasta. Link to the Pasta's article in the description. Go leave him some engagement on that as well. Anything you want to tell people before we head out of here?
Yeah,
that's about it.
If, as I said, trying to find lesser known Black figures to feature on the show for the next few weeks. So if you have a name,
I think one got put. Franz Fanon, Black Panther guy, right? I do believe. I had to look into it. I think that was put in there.
But yeah, let me know if there's a lesser known Black figure you want us to highlight this month.
Physician and psychiatrist Franz Fanon supported the Algerian War of Independence from France. So we'll look into it. I'm down.
Into that.
So
but yeah, any Black figures, let me know.
Yep. Pasta said Reverend Annie Chambers. I know they've talked to her quite a few times. So
yeah, We talked about quite a few.
Yes, sir.
But yeah, let me know so I can do the research. And yeah, just trying to highlight people who may not otherwise get some recognition at all. So we'll try to do what we can. But let me know and shoot me a Twitter about it if you know anybody we should feature. Otherwise, no, just see you next week, I suppose.
Cool. Remember, kids, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
Have a good week, everyone. Please stay safe.
There's a difference between peace and liberation, is there not? You can have injustice and have peace. Isn't that correct? Have peace and be enslaved.
Yes.
So peace isn't the answer.
No.
Liberation is the answer.